Pretty wild action today. We came into the session wanting to see essentially how that 5510, 5500 area was going to be treated and whether or not buyers could show a continuation off the open up and through that 5510. That was the main watch this morning. And the significance of that zone, you can see the prior weekly structure right through here, right? Prior area of support. Now becoming resistance, sellers stepping in pretty heavily, actually breaking the most recent higher low for this near-term structure that we have here. Getting back down into that Friday low, that last Friday low. If we actually take a look at your regular trading hours chart here, if you were with me in the live stream today, we were talking about watching the reaction versus that Friday low in the 5410 area. Here's your regular trading hours chart, 5-minute chart, and we could see how aggressively buyers stepped in versus that Friday low. So Monday, we have a big gap higher, right? That gap gets filled. Friday low gets retested. And there's a big bounce up and through that 5510 level of interest. Where are we at now? Where are we now? Well, buyers have managed to force not only a near-term change in character, but an intermediate-term change in character. Push up and through that 5510. Take a look at this. On your hourly and your 4-hour, 5510, and then the other level I had mentioned this morning was that 5530 area. And the significance of this point, if you remember from last Friday again, that's the NFP high, right? So NFP, you have the pre-market bounce right there, and price makes a significant lower high. Now, that was within the broader bearish context because we were dealing with an index and a setup that had just triggered a daily breakdown, right? So it's important to recap what has happened, where price is coming from, so we can kind of get a sense of where price might go. So we have the prior range, daily time frame breakdown, right? Retest, and then from there, you have bearish activity. Market structure, this is all just market structure, bearish activity. So coming into this week, we start to see more bullish action. We have Monday morning, with the gap higher, we have a series of higher lows starting to materialize. And that was one of the things that was making the current setup so challenging to trade over the past couple of days, is the fact that we have intermediate term. And when I say intermediate term, I'm referring to the past few weeks. We have an intermediate term setup that is bearish, and then we had a near term setup that was a little bit bullish, right? That near-term structure, when we were taking a look at the 15-minute chart, we had that series of higher lows. We had that Monday morning gap. So the question was this morning, is this essentially this CPI low going to give us another higher low? Now, the answer was no. You see the break of those recent lows right through here, 54.50. And this, I consider this like a failed breakdown. So once price actually reclaimed this area, think of this as like a higher time frame spring. If you're familiar with the spring setup, it's going to be a much higher time frame spring. So it undercuts all that support from this week, probably traps a lot of sellers right through there. You have big buying activity versus that Friday low. That area holds as support. And then as this continues to kind of climb, any of the shorts from earlier in the session or maybe from this week, they start to find themselves in trouble, right? They start to find themselves either back to break even or even underwater. Once price actually breaks today's high, any shorts from this week are down. They're probably down quite a lot. And so when you have these big rallies, it's not just buying activity, but it's shorts that are forced to cover. You have forced covering as price kind of pushes higher. And so the question now, as we get into PPI tomorrow, price is back into an interesting juncture here. We do know that the intermediate term has shown a change of character, right? We know that the near term is looking more and more bullish. But now ES is into that prior breakdown point. So this 55.60 area, this is a much higher time frame level of interest, a daily and a weekly time frame level of interest, and it will be the main watch for tomorrow's session. What buyers are going to be attempting to do is they want to see price back within this prior range. I'm sure you all remember this range quite well. We spent about 3 weeks within that near-term range. And so buyers are looking for that push up into that prior range. And then once we're back into that prior range, we have plenty of very clear levels to be working with. But the reaction into 55.60 is the main focus for tomorrow's watch. Sellers, of course, will be looking to defend that breakdown point. Because remember, that is the higher time frame breakdown point. Let's jump over to the daily chart. Start to take the drawings off and you could see it a bit more clearly. So here's that sideways range, right? I mean, look at this action here. It's just pure barcode on the daily time frame chart. Right through here. Now price coming in to retest that area. The other interesting thing that we talked about in the weekly candle, the newsletter from Sunday, was the fact that price on this sell-off was coming into that 50% retracement, almost to the tick there. And I'm drawing the fib here from the Monday, August 5th low into the Tuesday, September 3rd high. Now, I know there's a lot of levels on here, but if you look closely, you'll see that 50% right through here. And Friday's low, September 6th low, is pretty much to the tick on that 50% fib retracement. This is the significance of the 50 and 61% fib retracement. That's why I call it the Fibonacci buy zone. You're typically going to see a response from the opposite party once 50 to 61% of the move has been retraced. So I just thought I'd point that out. Pretty interesting. Love to see action like that. Love to see analysis pan out nicely. Helps to add conviction in what it is that you're doing. So for tomorrow on ES, we're looking at 55.60. That's the main watch. Let's jump over to NQ. Now NQ doing that same exercise. Just really quickly here. See where we're at. Last week's low right there at the 61%. Right there at the 61%. So gotta love it. Gotta love it. Now let's look at that structure. That hourly structure. Same type of approach for today, right? We wanted to see, our buyers going to show that continuation up and through the 18,900. Sellers stepped in pretty aggressively off the open. Pretty easy to avoid getting trapped off the open. A couple of things we talked about in the live stream. That bearish bar leading into the open, right? And then the following bars, all bearish, right? If you're looking for longs, you're fighting some much higher time frame selling. So much easier to just wait for a 15-minute green bar or some type of change in character in the intraday structure. If you missed today's live stream, I highly recommend going back and watching it, because we talked about some really key points there on how you can avoid getting long with any of this action here by just following some very basic principles. Now, once that 15-minute hammer develops, again, price never looks back. And if we zoom out, we can see that there's a key area of support, right? All through here, key area of support. So buyers defend that key support zone. And the same concept that we just discussed in ES applies to NQ. As this thing starts to rally, as this thing starts to rally and you get that push, you start to get that 50% retracement, that 61% retracement, 78% retracement into session highs, right? Anyone who is short from this week is finding themselves in a big losing position. And so not only do we have buying activity, but we have shorts that are forced to cover. This is one of the dangers of trying to fade that trend day move. It's why you'll frequently hear me say, don't try to fade that trend day move. It's just not worth it in most cases. This is exactly why. Like, you may, unless your trade management is really on point, which for many of you it is, and that's great. But unless it's really on point, it's very easy to just get trapped trying to fade a trend day move. Now, as far as where we're at, you have the same sort of higher time frame change of character here on the intermediate term. Just look at the most recent lower highs from last week. The NFP high is significant. The last week volume point of control is significant. But price is even beyond that NFP high. It's up and through the 19,100, which was a significant area of resistance from last week. And it's back into this previous range for the most part. Right up into this area. And so very similar to ES, we want to see, can buyers sustain the move? Are they going to show any type of continuation of today's action, or do we see more of an inside day tomorrow? Now, we do have PPI tomorrow, but that being said, we're looking at almost a 2 ATR move today. That means NQ did 2x the normal range that it usually does. And so typically when you have these huge expansion days, it's going to be followed up by a little bit of compression, a little bit more of a neutral day. Now, that's not a 100% thing. As always, there are no absolutes in the market, but typically that is what we see. So my expectations are definitely a bit lower for tomorrow. We'll see that PPI reaction. PPI is not nearly as big of a print as CPI. It will still be widely watched. We will likely still have some pre-market trading opportunities, but as far as, looking for another trend day tomorrow, that is not something that I'll be doing. I'll be looking for more of a muted session. Now, could be totally wrong on this, but probability favors that type of session. So I'll just be looking at today's high as kind of the main reference point, and we'll get those upside levels of interest updated for tomorrow with the pre-market prep notes and then the live stream for tomorrow as well. So just wanting to see, can buyers show that continuation move? And are we going to be having more of a neutral type of session, more of an inside day type of day, and then potentially that continuation move on Friday? So a couple things to keep in mind. As of right now, what we know is that the near-term bullishness that we've been seeing the past couple of days has shown good follow through, and price has been able to force more of an intermediate term change of character. So buyers as of right now are not really in too much trouble on NQ unless you start to see 19,100 failing and this 19K area failing. If those areas start to fail, then yeah, the buyers will be in trouble again. So those are kind of the two primary points that we need to see holding if you want to see this bullishness continue. So hope you guys had a good day. If you have questions about anything, you know where to find me. Feel free to shoot me a DM. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow morning for the live stream. Have a great evening. Take care. Later.